you know how important it is to manage your emotions in a relationship. And so in this video, I'm going to show you why this cycle happens and how you can get out of it and what true emotions management actually looks like. And I know this because, again, I've been known as the person with anger management issues in the past. And I've tried a lot of approaches from my therapist, from anger management classes, and nothing seemed to work. But this one change, this one shift in approach in changing the way we control our emotions has changed everything for me. And it's changed the lives of thousands of my clients as well. And I want to show it to you today. So to understand what this new approach is, we need to understand that there's really 3 levels of emotions management here. And the first level is what we call the fragile approach, or the fragile state. And just like the name suggests, this is the state where when things are good, when you're on a vacation, for example, when you guys are not having stresses in your life pressuring you, you're gonna be fine. You can keep your emotions just fine. But once the pressure comes, and the more intense the pressure, you start to break. And to imagine the fragile state is almost like imagining a vase. It looks beautiful when it's just sitting on a shelf and nothing is really happening, but once pressure comes, it starts to break. And the thing about life is that pressure in life, difficulties and problems are a natural part of life. And so if you are in a fragile state, of course, you know that being a fragile state is not really controlling your emotions. We all know this because once the pressure comes, we are going to break. Now, we know that the first stage here is bad, but I want to bring you to the second level, which is what we call the robust stage. And I think this is what a lot of people think of when they think about emotions management. So to imagine the robust state, I want you to imagine, for example, a rock or even a diamond. It's very strong and it looks very strong on the surface and it's very sturdy. But just like a rock or a diamond with enough pressure, it's actually very brittle. It shatters under pressure. So the image I want you to have when you think about the robust state of emotions management is almost like clenching your ass to keep your crap in a way. Right? Or the other way we can look at this is imagine there's a rock, a massive rock above you, and you're trying to just hold things down. You're trying to hold things together. So basically here, life is giving you a lot of pressure and you're telling yourself it's going to be okay. You're doing a lot of breathing exercises and you're trying to just keep it together despite all this pressure. And if you look back to that cycle of guilt and failure that I talked about in the beginning of the video, the robust state is where you'll find yourself in that cycle the most. Because this is, again, another one of those times where, let's say, you are using a lot of willpower to try to keep yourself together, to try to keep yourself calm. And in the moment you're talking to your partner and she says something that triggers you, that makes you upset. In that moment, you may be doing some breathing exercises, you may be telling yourself some mantras, telling yourself it's gonna be okay, just keep calm, just keep calm. But the more you tell yourself to keep calm, you just find yourself suppressing a lot of things that you feel. But it doesn't stop the fact that you're still feeling those things. And eventually, with enough pressure, with enough triggers, you're eventually going to explode. Either you explode in that moment, or maybe this buildup happens over many weeks, many months. Eventually, you just can't take it anymore and you explode. So I'm sure if you see it this way, you can see also that the robust level of emotion management, the level that I think a lot of people think about when they think about being emotionally bulletproof, is not really sustainable as well. And this brings us to the third stage, which is the highest stage of emotional management, which is what we call anti-fragile. I know that's kind of a very academic and theoretical word to hear, but I couldn't think of a better word to encapsulate this, because if you think about what is the opposite of being fragile, it's really things like robust or strong or sturdy. But that's just being robust. The anti-fragile state is a state where, imagine your human body. Every time you get sick, your body actually gets stronger. Your body just doesn't just withstand that sickness and just stays the same afterwards. It actually gets stronger with the more pressure it gets. And this anti-fragile state is actually the state that we refer to when we talk about being emotionally bulletproof. It's not just being robust and keeping things together. It's actually that the state of the more pressure you get, the more you thrive. So we talked about this in many of our videos before, where we talked about how if your partner makes it hopeless for you, for example, that's actually a massive opportunity. And if you are able to see your partner making it hopeless as a massive opportunity, that's an example of your partner giving you some pressure, life giving you some pressure, but you rise with the more pressure you get. Another example of this is when we talk about resistance. So, it's the mindset of whenever my partner gives me resistance, a lot of people who are in the robust or fragile state, they're not going to like that. They're going to think of that as an inconvenience, as a frustrating thing to go through. But for me, I actually love it when my partner gives me resistance, because when she resists me, she's telling me a negative confirmation bias, a problem that she has about me or the relationship that will cause havoc later on in the future. But the fact that she gave me resistance means that now I know about it. And once I know about it, I can actually do something about it. I can turn it from a negative into positive. The same way, if you're working for a company, for example, if your employees or your colleagues tell you some bad news about something that is going wrong with the business, with the work, you actually should love that. Because whether that person tells you or not, that problem was going to be a problem either now or later. If the person didn't tell you, didn't give you that tough truth, you would never have known about it, and that problem is left there to fester. But the fact that that person told you about it is actually a really good thing. So if you have, again, this anti-fragile mindset of how you see resistance, how you see tough truth, how you see hopelessness, again, with the more pressure you get, the more you're going to thrive, the more you're going to seize the moment. So if you look at a lot of my client interviews, you will never hear any of my clients saying, I was doing so well emotionally until this level of pressure happened. Because by definition, if they're saying that, that means they're robust at best or fragile at best. But if you're anti-fragile, again, the more pressure you get, the more you should thrive. And this anti-fragile state is the only state, guys, that a reconciliation can actually happen. Because with a reconciliation, you're going to face a ton of resistance, a ton of negative confirmation bias. You're going to have to fight through a lot of it. So we talk about how reconciliation is never a linear process. It actually goes down first because as you change, for example, your partner will become increasingly suspicious of your changes. She might resist your changes even more in the short term. And if you are not anti-fragile, you're not going to be able to take the many months or weeks or months of this increased resistance because of what we call the paradox of change. But it's also the only way that we can create a relationship that actually gets better with time. Because again, problems, challenges, as you go through different life stages, you're gonna face many unique and different kinds of problems as you go on in your relationship. For a robust or fragile relationship, your relationship can never get stronger with time. But with an anti-fragile relationship, the more problems you have, the stronger it gets with time. Now, to understand how we can get to this state of anti-fragility, we need to understand some basics of how our emotions form in the first place. So there's a few key principles I want you to keep in mind. The first key principle is that the events itself do not cause emotions, but emotions are caused by the way we interpret our world. So a lot of people I talk to, for example, they'll always say, well, I felt hopeless because my partner also felt hopeless. So basically they're saying, I feel XYZ because my partner did XYZ. Event XYZ happened. But it's actually not true. You feel XYZ because of the way you interpret your partner's actions, the way you interpret the intentions behind it. Basically, it's the way you interpret that world or what she did. And you know that it's not the event itself that causes the emotions, but your interpretations of it. Because if you put 100 people in the same room looking at the same things, you will get 100 people with 100 wildly different emotions at that very moment. One could be elated, one could be extremely depressed and sad at that moment. And it's because of the subjective ways that they're interpreting that event that makes their emotions, not the event itself. Now let's go further into principle number 2. So if our interpretations cause our emotions, not the event itself, then what causes our interpretations? Well, what causes it is our reflexive beliefs and paradigms we have about the world. And let me illustrate this with an example. About 6 years ago, I was trying to build this business still. And whenever I would come home from work, my partner would always ask me, how was your day? And my partner's not the kind of person who would just ask one question. She would ask a lot of questions. But at that point in time, my belief about the world was that I was someone who hasn't really proven themselves, that I always had to prove myself to the world, that people were always doubting me, people were always questioning me, people were always trying to bring me down. And so when she was asking these questions, I didn't interpret her questions as, oh, she's curious about my work, she's interested, she loves me, she cares about me, but I saw it as, she's trying to interrogate me, she's trying to get me to prove myself to her, and I didn't like it. And so because of the way I believed about the world, it colored the way I interpreted that action. And it made me feel very frustrated, very upset, very annoyed at her questions at that time. Now this brings me to my third principle, which is that these paradigms and beliefs we have about the world, it feels true to us in the moment, but it's actually very subjective and may not be true at all. So for example, in that moment, when my partner was asking me all these questions and I was getting annoyed because I was interpreting it as she was trying to interrogate me about my job so that I can prove myself to her. Was it really true that she was asking those questions because she was trying to interrogate me? She was trying to get me to prove myself to her. It's not true at all. But at that moment, if you told me that I was wrong in thinking that she was not trying to interrogate me, I would call you crazy. It felt so true to me. It felt so right to me to feel annoyed at that particular time. And this paradox and this blind spot is actually why managing emotions can become very challenging for a lot of people. Because in the moment, when, let's say, you find yourself helplessly feeling angry in the moment, feeling annoyed in the moment, which you'll regret later when you get to your senses again, but in the moment, it will always feel so right. It will always feel so justified. And you can never catch yourself in that moment. Now, another principle that you need to understand about emotions is that it's always going to be very self-confirming as well. Because again, it feels so right to you. So let's say here, if you have the paradigm that it takes two to tango, that you can never save your relationship alone, and once your partner thinks that it's hopeless, then it's really hopeless. So if you have that paradigm, and if you see that your partner right now is feeling hopeless, then you're going to interpret her hopelessness as also, this is my time to also feel hopeless. It's really hopeless now. That's how you will interpret the world. And when you interpret the world that way, you will then feel very hopeless as well. Now, once you feel that way, that will color what you do, your actions, which is that you will act all dejected, you will act all needy, you will act all sad and depressed and pretty much very apathetic. And your actions, of course, lead to an outcome. In this case, the outcome could be that your partner looks at you being all depressed, being all apathetic. The leader has given up here, and she might also give up and retreat even more. Now, of course, when you get this outcome, it loops back again to be filtered through your paradigm of like, whenever you see your partner being hopeless, that means it's really hopeless. So you look at your partner being hopeless here, and you feel even more hopeless, and this whole cycle continues again. And nowhere in this cycle do you ever catch yourself and go, am I right to feel this way? Am I right to believe this? And if you're not careful, you're gonna fall into this cycle where you are feeling more and more hopeless or more annoyed, more and more dejected, more and more frustrated, and you can never catch yourself in any of these parts of the cycle. And this is why we say again, emotions are really self-confirming. And the final principle you need to understand is what we call the emotional flywheel. And it's how this self-confirming nature of emotions can happen very quickly within a matter of seconds. So for example, you could be sitting at home watching a comedy show, something that's supposed to make you laugh. But in the moment, your paradigms and your beliefs again makes you think about something your partner said. Maybe you interpret it in a bad way, making you feel bad. And suddenly, while sitting on the couch watching this comedy show, you might find yourself feeling very upset with your partner, and nothing new actually happened. She didn't actually do anything new. It was just based on your thinking and rumination of this cycle here. And before you know it, within 5 minutes of sitting on a couch watching a comedy show, you can find yourself feeling happy to all the way feeling angry in just 5 minutes. And this is actually why it's impossible sometimes to cheer up a very depressed person or calm down a very angry person in a moment. Because again, this emotional flywheel is like a moving truck that you're trying to stop. So now that we understand the principles behind emotions here, we can understand the difference in approaches of how we get to the fragile state, how we get to the robust state, and how ultimately we get to the anti-fragile state as well. So if you're simply wanting to go to the fragile state, then people here, they don't really understand the existence of the 5 principles of emotions that we talked about earlier. And so because they're unaware of the existence of it, they can't really control it. They are just a slave to their emotions. They're enslaved to whatever events, whatever thing their partner says. All they know is that it's happening in life is causing their emotions, and they can't really help but feel what they feel. And of course, the worst part is that when they feel what they feel, they'll always feel very right and justified for feeling what they feel. And so you'll always notice that people who are very prone to anger, in the moment, whenever you try to call them out on the anger, they'll always have some very good excuse, very good justifications for why they feel angry in that moment. And the second emotional approach is really the robust approach where, yes, you can know that this cycle exists here. The cycle of from paradigms all the way to your emotions can exist. But for these people, they're trying to fix their emotions after the emotions has formed, and usually after the whole flywheel has formed as well. So for example, if you go to therapy or a lot of anger management classes and you tell them that, hey, I have emotional regulation issues, they will tell you to journal. They will tell you to have breathing techniques. They will tell you to state to yourself a bunch of mantras, a bunch of reminders in the moment to try to keep yourself calmer and to see things from a different perspective. But again, if you're trying to do this after the emotions has formed, and especially after the flywheel has formed, it's just like trying to stop a moving truck. And this is why a lot of people find themselves stuck in a cycle where they try very hard to keep themselves calm in the moment, but the moment this flywheel takes over and you just cannot help but feel the frustration, the anger, etc. This robust technique can actually make things worse. It's what in the program we call the purple giraffe paradox. So to understand this, I want you to not think of a purple giraffe. I mean, what are you thinking about right now? Most likely you're thinking about a purple giraffe. Now, when in life do you ever think about a purple giraffe? The only reason why you think about a purple giraffe just now was because I said to you, don't think about it. So here we understand why people say what you resist persists. Because even if you're trying to tell yourself to not do something, the fact that you're trying to tell yourself to not do something makes you think about that thing. So if you're trying to tell yourself don't feel angry, you're going to think about being angry. And so when you try to keep yourself calm in the moment by telling yourself don't be angry, that's actually going to make the anger usually worse, because that's going to be paired with a lot of guilt, a lot of anger around the fact that now you're angry. Now, when you look at the anti-fragile approach, if you look at the cycle again, starting with paradigms to interpretations to emotions and etc., again, the robust state works on this side of the cycle. They try to fix things after the emotions is formed, but the anti-fragile state works on this side, where we're trying to change the paradigms of how you see the world, so that when events happen, your reflexive way you interpret the world will be very different. So for example, if you're trying to change the way you look at your partner feeling hopeless, if you're trying to change the way you look at resistance or tough truths or difficulties in your relationship, if you learn to believe that those are actually opportunities, those are actually good moments, when those conflicts come, when the resistance comes, you're naturally going to interpret it as a positive thing. And when you interpret it as a positive thing, you'll feel positive things. And so here, there's no need to emotionally regulate, because you don't even feel the bad emotions in the first place. And in fact, whenever problems come, you actually feel good because you interpret it in a proper way. And so you can see how this approach, it doesn't make people feel more exhausted as time goes by. It doesn't make people feel like they're clenching their asshole in to keep their crap in. It doesn't feel like you're forcing anything. The right emotions just come much more naturally, much more effortlessly. And this is why the anti-fragile state is the state where men don't eventually blow up, where the more pressure you get, the more you rise. And this is the state where leaders actually operate in. If you look at top athletes, for example, they often don't become their best until the worst moments come, the high pressure moments come. Same thing for leaders. Whenever it comes to crunch time, whenever they feel a lot of pressure, that's actually when they perform their best. Because people who are the top 1%, the successful ones in relationships, in business, in athletics, in performance, whatever it is, they have really embraced what we call the anti-fragile mindset. So here basically, the more lemons they get, the more lemonades they make. And so this is what it actually means to be truly emotionally bulletproof. And so how do we get to this state then? In our program, we focus this development into 5 different stages. So the first stage is what we call developing and cultivating awareness of what you feel in the moment. So in the program, we call it the seat of consciousness. So this is essentially developing this awareness to see the emotions you feel very fully. Not only the emotions, but also the interpretations you're making. It's seeing the paradigms you have about the world that is causing the interpretations and thus feelings as well. And it's seeing these observations of what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're doing, etc., without any judgment, just simple observance, acceptance of what you're feeling at that moment. Because if you don't develop the skill of simply observing things, if you are, let's say, observing yourself feeling angry and you're judging yourself feeling angry, then you're actually going to fall into what we call, again, the purple giraffe paradox, where now you may be feeling guilty or angry about the fact that you're feeling angry. So it's actually going to worsen that anger. So again, the more you resist something, the more it persists. And this can sound very simple to develop, but I can tell you from working with thousands of clients, a lot of men actually struggle with this because they haven't been really used to or trained to see and simply observe their emotions without any judgment. They're always seeing their emotion without any judgment, and even if they try to see their emotions, often men don't have enough emotional literacy to even understand what they're feeling, to understand what they're thinking. They're just seeing what they're feeling and go, oh, that's a good or bad feeling. And that's it. It doesn't go any deeper than that. And if you cannot fully see and accept the true nature of what you feel, then you really can't begin to fix any of these. You really can't begin to fix your feelings. You can't begin to fix your paradigms. You can't begin to fix your interpretations. You can't fix something that you cannot see. So the first step is to develop this awareness of what you feel in what we call the seat of consciousness in our program. And once we see this and once we accept this, we can then start to go deeper and investigate what are the true root causes of whatever we feel, whatever we think at this moment right now. And the reason why we need to be specific like this is that, let's say you go to a doctor, it doesn't actually help if the doctor just says, oh, you are sick. Well, doc, I know that. But the doctor needs to actually go to find the root. Okay, you are sick because this part is sick, because of this, because of this. This is the exact root of your sickness. And once we find the exact root, then we can talk about the treatment plan. And when we have these bad feelings caused by the bad interpretations, caused by the bad paradigms, what is actually happening is that your mind is actually being sick too right now. And in our program, we call these mind viruses. And we have 3 categories of mind viruses. The first category is what we call the victim mindset mind viruses, where these are the mind viruses that really make you quite dejected, shift blame a lot, and take away responsibility from yourself. The second nature of mind viruses is what we call the disguises of desires. These are the mind viruses that keep us very tethered, keep our emotions swinging wildly with our environment, with the weather, with the emotions of the moment. And then we have other layers of the bulletproof vest, like the FAE bias, etc., that really wreaks havoc in the way we see the world, we interpret the world in a bad way that makes us upset when there's actually nothing to be upset about. And I want you to see these 3 categories of emotional mind viruses in a way, almost like how you see the colors. So if you look at the colors, for example, there's infinite colors, just like how you have infinite emotions. But the infinite colors are really caused by 3 primary colors. The same way, we can have infinite emotions here, but our infinite emotions is just a unique cocktail of these 3 categories of mind viruses that we have. So I found that this actually makes it a lot easier for my clients because it constrains the universe of possible emotions and thinking and paradigms that really affect how we feel. And after working with 4,000 plus clients, I've never seen one instance where someone feels an emotion and it's not a cocktail of one of these 3 categories. And once we understand what the root core is, what the root core paradigm is that leads to your interpretations and your feelings, etc., we can then start to understand what is the basic MO, what is the basic voices, the basic narratives that our mind is telling us whenever we feel the feelings that we have. So whenever you feel angry, for example, and whenever you tell yourself that you're right and justified for feeling angry, your brain is telling you a narrative. It's telling you a story of why you should feel angry, why you have every right to feel angry right now, why you should feel angry about what she said right now. So this is basically your mind virus having an MO of how they trick and lie to yourself to convince yourself that you should feel angry or whatever bad emotions you feel right now. So once we understand the root, we need to recognize what these voices are like. Because if we don't, then we cannot really do the next step, which is we need to talk back to it. So the 4th stage is really when we talk back to it. So in our program, for example, for each strain of, let's say, victim mindsets, or for each strain of the DODs, or the disguise of desires, or each strain of the bulletproof vest layers, we give people kind of, hey, here's the usual MOs of these strains, but also we show people, here's how you talk back to it. Here's the key reinterpretations you can use to talk back to it. And I want you to think about this like the angel and the devil on your shoulder. The mind viruses kind of act like the devil on your shoulders. They're speaking some really convincing stuff to you of why you should feel angry. And here we're trying to develop the other side. We're trying to strengthen the angelic side, where in the moment where you want to feel angry, for example, or in the moment where you should feel angry, you are now trying to program this angelic side. Right now, the devilish side is being programmed. You've been living reflexively by the devilish side for a long time. We want to switch that to the angelic side now. And the last stage that we have our clients do is we start to reprogram this new angelic side, the new reinterpretations, the new healthier paradigms via what we call autosuggestions. And autosuggestions is just a very academic word for using sounds and sight to really program our memory and to really program ourselves. And so if you look at, for example, why do we remember jingles a lot? Because again, our hearing is one of the senses that is the most closely associated with memory. Same thing with sight. We often remember visions, we have dreams about visions, because again, sight and hearing are the 2 senses that are most closely related with memory. And so we're trying to use this to our advantage by creating what we call autosuggestions to try to program this new reinterpretation so that it becomes your new reflexive way of thinking. And once that paradigm, the new paradigm becomes that new reflexive way of thinking, whenever some events happen, you're going to naturally, reflexively interpret it in a positive way. You're naturally going to feel positive things. You're naturally going to do positive things. You're naturally going to get more positive outcomes. And this repeats again. And it puts you in a whole different cycle. And it doesn't feel exhausting, doesn't feel effortful, doesn't feel like you're clenching anything to keep together anything. Because whatever you feel, whatever you interpret will be much more natural to you at this point. And guys, the last thing is really seeing your mind as a web. So again, you have all these layers, the 3 categories of the mind viruses. Once you fix one of these mind viruses, you want to move on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And so basically you're strengthening the whole web of your mind. And as you fix all these layers, then you fix a lot of the ways you see the world. And you'll find that managing your emotions, getting angry will no longer become a problem anymore. So if you want to learn more about this approach to emotions management and more so that you can really master the internal shifts behind yourself to create more safety, to create the 5 pillars of the relationship, I want you to join me in my masterclass in the 5 proven steps to rebuilding your relationship from the ground up. In that masterclass, I'll show you the exact steps that my clients have used to take them from a very hopeless situation to where they are today. So if you want to join me in that masterclass, click the link above my head, also down below this video. And for now, guys, I hope you enjoyed that video, and I'll see you in the next one.